All right, I think we are live. Hopefully, we're live and working. What's happening, Fish and Friends? Welcome to another episode. I am super duper excited for this episode because, as you can see, whoops, it's going to be this way. We have a special guest tonight. Mr. Chad has joined us. Chad, how are you?
I'm good now, man. To be honest with you, I've had a rough 10 days. I got the gift of COVID from iCast, and it was rough, man. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna get into the political divides between the left or the right side of this whole thing, but my wife had it. Actually, she had it 3 times because they misdiagnosed it and gave her an antibiotic that actually compromised her liver because her body was trying to fight off COVID and that at the same time. And I knew she's tough as nails, and I knew that it wiped her out, but I thought it wiped her out because of all the complications. And there was a time last year where I had a undiagnosed virus and they check marked it as COVID, but I never got a positive test. And so after getting this, I can tell you, I don't think I had COVID before, because what I just finished dealing with was, it was rough, man. It was by far one of the roughest things I've been through. A good 4 days of just being completely wiped out, cycling fever, unbelievable headaches, body aches that felt like your flesh was being peeled back. And then, you would get over that, and about day 5 or 6, I'd feel good for like 2 hours and then get just run over by these headaches and body aches. And then, it was fatiguing because you can't sleep, right? And so for days seem like a week, when you just can't ever get comfortable, and you can't get up and move around. So then you don't feel good, and then you sit in a chair or lay down, and then wherever your body's touching starts to ache. And God, it was just crazy. And I had come off of one of the most active periods in my recent adult life, because I had done the whole 75 hard thing. I had just hit the 100-pound mark in weight loss.
Damn, man, that's awesome. Congrats, dude. That's a ton of work. People don't understand how much goes into.
Oh, dude, it was so brutal. And when I hit the wall and then I got the positive test, I actually didn't even think about the fact that I wasn't going to be able to finish 75 hard. When I got the positive test, my wife comes home and I'm feeling like crap. And then she's getting ready to do her second workout. And I was like, oh, man. I was like, well, I did my first workout outside this morning, but I'll go do my second workout now, because you got to do 2 45-minute workouts a day. Mm-hmm. And she's like, dude, you're not going to be able to go outside for 10 days. And I was like, well, yeah, but I can. She's like, you're not going to be able to stay on. And then the realization hit me that, like, holy crap. And then I thought, well, maybe if I just don't get around anybody and I go do my outside workout in my backyard or something, I can like, and this is how hard headed I am. I just agreed with her that evening, but I went ahead and did second workout so I could stay in the game. Because I was giving up 56 days, man. That was a long time.
Yeah.
And I went ahead and did that one and just, half-assed it, got it done. The next morning, she left to go do some work, and I thought, I'm going to get up, I'm going to put my shoes on. And this is how hard-headed I am. I bent over to put my shoes on in my closet, and I was tying my shoes. And then I remember waking up on the floor, big knot on my head, my shoe half untied, and I don't know how long I was laying on the floor, but I literally passed out from trying to tie my shoes and knocked my head on the wall. And I thought, okay, well, this is probably a sign that you are going to have to just bite the bullet and realize you're not going to finish this thing, which sucks, because the rules of 75 hard, for people who don't know, is if you don't do your thing every day, you start over at day 1. So I'm finishing up quarantine today, and I plan on kicking off round 2 of 75 hard tomorrow, but I'm going to play it by ear and see how I feel and not push myself too hard, because one of the things that you read about is that you can nosedive pretty quick if you push it too hard after COVID, especially after the Delta variant, which is what I was diagnosed with this time for my cast. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're upright. Yeah, nothing to mess with at all, man. So take it slow, take it a day at a time. But I'm glad you're here. And kind of like we talked about before, dude, I'm super pumped that you took time to jump on here. I didn't know that. Otherwise, I wouldn't have even asked you. So I'm like double pumped that you're on here.
It's going to feel good to get back to talking to some people.
Yeah.
Especially somebody I'm a fan of. During COVID, I've been disconnected, you know what I mean? So it's kind of like, yeah, man, it's going to be good to get back in.
Yeah, dude, fishing is a great way to clear the brain. And I went through some family stuff, I talked about, I just lost my grandma. So, dude, fishing and being able to talk to people on here literally is a savior, man. Like keeps me sane, being able to go out and do stuff, even when crazy stuff's going on in the world, like, mental health is a problem, and fishing is for me one way to deal with that. So
yeah, there's my picture of my grandpa right there above my thing, and that's I lost him in March of last year. Complications of COVID and all that good stuff. So sorry to hear about your grandma, and my heart goes out to everybody out there that lost people. It's always hard to lose somebody, but it's really tough with all of the restrictions associated with COVID. Because it's like you don't even really get to start the grieving process, because you don't get to do I hate to say normal, but there's a normal process that goes with grieving in our culture and our society. And when you don't get to do that, you feel like you're kind of stuck in the starting blocks of it. So it just has lasted longer. And that picture right there was I wrote a book about kayak fishing about 11 years ago. And one of the things that I said made me want to fish is that my grandpa always put me in the back of this John boat, and he would stick me out in the middle of the bayou where I couldn't reach everything. And so he was always, jigging with a jigging pole for we call them white perch or crappie or sockeye. And I just started picking up bait casters and spinner reels, because I was like, well, I'll be danged if I'm going to be stuck out here in the middle of the bayou where I'm not going to catch anything. Or at least if I pick up a casting or spinning rod, I can cast to the bank. And I was bass fishing while he was doing that. And that's really, that view right there is what lit the fire for me. So I threw that picture up there as a reminder, and
I love it, man. I love it. Yeah. Memories. And it's funny how you get older. Like, you take so many things for granted when you're younger. They're always going to be there, or I can always do this. And then, time starts to go by and you see stuff and it's like, I don't know, I never know when my ticket's going to be pulled. So take every day as it is a blessing. But today I'm excited to get into fishing with you. I know we've got a bunch of people on already, 155 people on. Thank you all so much for joining us. Leather Stocking Angler, if there's any sort of question you have, anybody who donates, I'll always be sure to call that out. I greatly appreciate anybody who leaves money. I don't ever push you guys to do that, but anybody who does, I always appreciate it a ton. So Leather Stocking, thank you so much. I see we got my guy, Jim Tackle Junk, in here saying, what's up? Says he's got the surround sound on, so the neighbors might give me a sub. That's all right. I need all the help I can get, Jim. Thank you, brother. Fishing with Gramps in the house. He's another kayak angler. We're got a bunch of people on. So what up? I'm going to steal if you've ever watched Burley, or if you've heard of the Burley guys, they're good guys. I've been on their channel a few times. Nice cats. They do a lot of kayak fishing, so they might hit you up to get you on their channel. But
hey, I'd love to make the connection.
Hell yeah. Oh, I'll set it up. What they do, I totally stole this from theirs. They do a question of the day. So usually it's not super fishing related. It's just a random question, but I wanted to start with the fishing question for you, because I'm sure we're going to go down a number of paths and spin-offs and stuff. So let's say that fishing has gotten to be too much fishing pressure, and the powers that be say, you know what, people have too many lures when they go out. You can from now on only have one lure when you go out to fish. So let's say you're leaving for a kayak tournament and you can only bring one lure or one rig with you. What are you going to take and why?
Is it for a tournament? Is that what you're saying?
I'm just saying in general. You can be on your
Well,
way to a tournament.
I'm gonna cheat and kind of quantify this question depending on the circumstances. Look, if I've got to fish one lure for the rest of my life and I've got to cover the whole water column and all that good stuff, it's going to be a jig, right? A jig is in my opinion, the most versatile 12 months out of the year, border to border, north and south, border to border, east and west, multi-species, blah, blah, blah. Okay. It's definitely one of those things. The most effective lure as a standalone lure, in my opinion, is a Senko. So if you're going to talk about like you've got to fish one lure, one configuration. In other words, jigs, you're doing trailers and you're doing some of these other things. So if I've got to fish a naked jig forever, or I can fish only a Senko, I'm fishing a Senko. A Senko is by far the most effective, deadly lure, in my opinion. Again, year round. Ridiculously different versatile conditions that it applies to. And I've caught everything from, double digit bass all the way to, 1,000 dinks in a month on Senkos, right?
Yep.
But I truly believe when it comes to skipping, pitching, swimming, dragging, reaction bites, non-reaction bites, curiosity bites, all of those things you can't beat a jig, right? And I also feel like a jig is more of a upper average quality lure over, say, a Senko, right? You're going to catch a lot of dinks, and I'm not saying you don't catch dinks on a jig, but by and large, if you put the time in to become an accomplished jig fisherman, a lot of times you're putting jigs in places where bigger fish are, right? And you're getting it right in their face. And again, you can get a reaction bite, you can get a curiosity bite, you can get an antagonizer. You can do anything with a jig that you can pretty much do with almost any other lure. And I'm also a tinkerer, right? I'm a modifier, an experimenter, and they're just that lure itself, that lure concept, no specific model, weight, size, head shape, but that lure lends itself to more modifications, tweaking, and modifications and tweaking, both in the things you can do to it, but the things you can do with it. Of anything out there. One of my most deadly combinations ever, and I talk about this and people get mad that I don't do more videos with it, but it's kind of one of them things. I don't want to do more videos with it, is to rig I call it the jig and twig, where I rig a jig on the bottom and come up about 2 foot and tie a hook with a Palomar knot and rig a Senko on that. And I call that the jig and twig. And it's almost like a drop shot lure, but I can pitch it, I can flip it, I can skip it. It doesn't change the action of the jig, and it really doesn't change the action of the Senko other than getting it down into the strike zone faster, but I can shake it, I can pick it up and let it fall like a drop shot. And so that's literally the 1-2 punch, if you will.
Interesting.
But if I had to choose, like if you're going to, gun to the head, that whole thing, it's a 1/2 ounce jig.
Not mad at that.
Black and blue, you know what I mean? That 1/2 ounce is in the middle of all of it. I like lighter jigs for some things, heavier jigs for some things, but yeah, probably a jig. Straight up.
If Randizzle was on, he'd be hooting and hollering right now. So he's definitely the jig guy. I guarantee he likes to tinker too. He's still trying to tinker to get a topwater jig set up so he can run topwater jigs and every jigs and
a tube. Rig a freaking tube on it, man, and just you can literally fish it like a topwater. I hold my rod tip up, put a big tube on the back of it, put a little glue on there, and when you reel it, that tube starts to create a little bit of pressure on one side, and then the tail kicks over, and it just swims on the top. Man, they murder it.
Oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to tell him about that. Yeah, he's tried like rage toads and stuff, reeling fast like a buzz bait, and he's like, dude, one day, somebody was telling us about like a super light jig. I don't know the name of it, but it's like they said it's got like a hollow head or something, so it weighs like nothing. He's like, dude, I'm gonna find some of those. I need to tell him.
There's a couple companies that make acrylic heads for the jig part of an Alabama rig, and I've actually used an acrylic head jig with a Stanley top toad on it, and the same thing. It's a top toad.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
In fact, somebody I did a picture for TRC covers, and I didn't realize that I had one of my favorite setups on there, which is one of those setups that I never take a picture of, but I wanted the lure to kind of stick out from under the rod cover.
Uh-huh.
And I didn't realize it until after they had posted it. I was like, oh crap. And it was literally my top toed on a jig.
Dude, it's funny. It's funny how people will pick up on every little detail in a video or in a picture. Dude, if you leave anything in there, they're gonna find it.
It's one of my favorite, like lily pad when they're scattered, but there's pockets, but there's still like hydrilla right to below the. Like I love to throw that out, raise my rod, and just slow wake it. But that way, when they blow up on it, it's got that weight. You can drop it down, and that jig makes it swim, and they just come back and I get a lot of second hits on that lure, and a lot of they hit it obviously and kill it right there on the spot. But I get a lot of comebacks, where you drag it up over the top of a pad, and I like to shake it on the pad where it creates that ripple effect, and they'll blow it up and miss it, but then I just let it fall to the bottom, and then dude, it's just deadly. But that's another pretty close to top water jig, is a jig with a especially if you go down to like a 1/4 ounce, put a double skirt on it in front of a Stanley top toed, and then I wire it on. Like I use like jig tie and wire, like tying skirts.
22 gauge, 22 gauge wire,
and twist it down to where it just grips on behind the weed guard, and dude, it's
oh my gosh. I'll have to get with you on some jig heads. I'll have to surprise Randall and hook him up. For me, Michael Grant nailed mine. I would go Texas rig. That's why I said it's kind of cheating. It's a rig, but I figure if I have a Texas rig and I'm not locked into one plastic, if I say, listen, this is all I have tied on my rod, this is all I'm taking with me. I could swim a worm. I could flip a creature bait into heavy stuff. I could, pull a crawl.
I would go with that argument. But again, when you ask me lure versus rig, because a Texas rig is like, what rig?
That's not a lure.
A lizard, a worm, a crawl bait. That's a whole spectrum of stuff. But yeah, there's just a lot of things that I think I can do with a jig that I can't do with the Texas rig. In fact, Tyler Real Fishing and I have had this discussion a lot of times. That turned into a video that he did that did really well on his channel. There's not a lot of difference, to be honest with you.
There's not, and I'm coming mainly from a bank perspective, because like throwing a jig from the bank, you're going to lose so many jigs in certain positions, whereas a weedless Texas rig for a bank guy, it's just so much more versatile. You can get in the nasty stuff and
so here's my debate winner over most people when we have this discussion. If I'm going to fish it super slow and I'm not going to try to cover a lot of water, in other words, if I'm not hopping and popping it and doing some of that stuff, or what people refer to as stroking the jig, I think that a Texas rig is far superior, where you're moving it more than you're letting it sit still. When you're in a scenario where you're letting it sit still more than you're moving it, then I think the jig edges out the Texas rig in most situations, because again, good bottom contact, you scoot it, that kicks up silt, and it's got better do nothing action because of the live rubber skirt in a lot of cases than a Texas rig would. Now you can get into the floating worm, and you can do a lot of that stuff with lizards and things like that, where that argument may tip back towards the Texas rig. But by and large, if I'm moving it more, Texas rig's going to win out. If I'm setting it more, then the jig's going to win out,
I like it. Yeah, especially for dragging. Like you try dragging a Texas rig too much, especially once you get around rock, you're gone. Much better having a jig.
And I used to think that the jig outperformed as a swim bait. Like in other words, I used to think, well, if I'm fishing an 8 to 12 foot of water, I throw it out there, I work it in the target zone, but then I swim it back to the boat. But, honestly, over the last 15 or 20 years, I've also convinced myself that swimming a Texas rig is pretty damn effective. And by and large, if you use the same approach, if you throw it out, you let it fall into the water column, you work it for the bottom contact, but then you be sure to swim it back to the boat, that Texas rig could be really deadly as well. But I've caught a heck of a lot more big fish swimming a jig than I have swimming a Texas rig. So I would always say that jig's going to win out. And I've just, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. This happens a lot to us as fishermen. You catch one something. so therefore you use it more, but because you use it more, you catch more. But I've just caught so many double-digit bass on a jig that it's one of those.
Must be nice.
I learned to really dial in. And let me quantify that. I think anybody can catch big fish during the spawn. I think anybody can catch big fish during the times where anybody can catch them. Where I started really separating myself and catching those big fish at a place called Briary Creek in Virginia is I started asking myself, where do these dang fish go during the, when they're not easy to find when they're on the beds. And I started really immersing myself in using Google Earth and going back and looking at the old maps. And I go, okay, here's an old road bed. Let me target that road bed. And then I started getting more advanced with the electronics. And I got to give credit where credit's due. I was out fishing and a guy was catching brim, putting them in a bucket, taking them over to this deep spot, hooking them in the back with a kale hook, throwing them out on a Carolina rig setup, a weight, and he was whacking these big fish. Now, I didn't want to fish live brim for big fish, but I wanted to catch these same big fish. So I started experimenting. And the first thing that I did is I started throwing these really big Colorado blade spinnerbaits to get down there to mimic a brim. And I wanted that thump. I wanted to keep it up off the bottom and kind of and I wanted to cover water in that lower part of the strike zone. What happened is one time I was reeling this like 1.5 ounce black with a black chrome blade jig, and I remember reeling it and I felt it load up a little bit and I thought it was a fish, so I started getting hyper. Oh, here we go. But what I realized is it was a tree limb, and I didn't 2 and 2 didn't add up. But what had happened is I had hooked it and I started to bend it, and then when it didn't pull free and I loaded it up and the rod was bent, I started to give back, and then I realized I was hung up. Well, I just shook it a little bit, and then it wham loaded up, and basically a big bass knocked it off of the limb. But I did then immediately realize what had happened. And in that point, the way I looked at it was I wasn't technically fishing a spinnerbait at that point. It was hung up on a limb. It was a jig, right? So that bass hit that thing. Man, I went on a tear for about 6 months fishing nothing but these big jigs. That's when I started putting Zoom horny toads and things like that were bigger on there to give it that broader profile. And I mean, I think that was 1 month where in 28 days, I caught 16 bass over 10 pounds. And I was obsessed, man. I lived 2 hours from there, and I would get off work, drive over there, fish for 5 hours, and drive home. So I was driving 4 hours to fish 5 hours, and then getting no sleep to go to work. So
embracing the grind,
dude. It was so good back then, man. We just sleep in a suit, sleep with a pillowcase with a bunch of clothes rolled up in it on the ground next to your truck, and just don't care.
Dude, those were the good days. Sleeping in the back of a truck. I couldn't imagine doing that now, but
I do it all the time. So.
Yeah, but I'm sure you got like some sort of mattress or something.
Well, I mean,
right?
I got a rooftop tent, so
yeah, it's a little bit different. Yeah, we used to sleep. I remember back in the day, we'd go fishing at my buddy's grandpa's, and we'd literally just sleep in the back of the truck, in a sleeping bag on the hard truck. And I never thought about it. Now I think about it, and my bones are like, oh.
Oh yeah.
Let's see. Okay, so we got past one question. We're 23 minutes in. Good Lord, I told you we're going to deviate on a whole bunch of stuff here. So, Chad, I didn't even get the chance to do this. For those of you who don't know Chad, give us like your 30-second elevator speech of you, what your channel's about, kind of what you do in the fishing world and industry. Because I honestly don't know. I know you're involved with KBF. I saw the tattoo there. Is that something that did you start that? How? Give us kind of the quick rundown of all that.
Yeah, so I own KBF. I started it in 2008 officially. Put it together and launched it in 2009 as a way to promote challenges, online catch, photo, release. I'd really gotten heavily involved in the catch, photo, release movement on the saltwater side. Brought it to the freshwater side with KBF and started doing online challenges. Built the first, kayak bass fishing tournament management system, before Tourney X or iAngler or Fishing Chaos or any of those other ones out there. And a buddy, actually I didn't build it. A buddy built it for me and helped me out. My original partner in KBF from Virginia, a guy named George Hughes. And so, yeah, that was a way of what I felt like, kicking off building a kayak bass fishing community. And actually, the way it worked is we were all sitting at somebody's house after going on a fishing trip, and I had gotten on a forum, and I was always frustrated with how on forums, the freshwater forum was the bottom forum of all the forums. It was the redheaded stepchild forum, and then bass was the bottom forum and the bottom forum. And I was just like, how is the most popular fish in the world like the bottom of the bottom for kayak fishing? And it was just because it was primarily saltwater at the time. So I said, I remember saying out loud, man, somebody ought to start a kayak bass fishing page. And my buddy looked at me and was like, why don't you start it, dude? And I was like, I don't know how to start no web page or this, that, and the other. And he's like, well, here, I'll show you how to do it. And right there on the spot, we went and bought it. Before it was GoDaddy, I think it was or anybody like that, you had to go buy it. Then you had to go find hosting. It was crazy. But he went and showed me how to buy the website. We did that and started it off. And yeah, man, 12 years later, 11 years later, we're still cranking.
That's awesome.
Wrote a book on kayak bass fishing back then, like I said, 2008, published it in 2009. Been just really, man, I've been obsessed with fishing out of a kayak. A lot like you guys, started off fishing out of everything, boats and bank. But I'm from Louisiana, and we had a lot of pirogues around and canoes. And, you got to have a boat to get anywhere in Louisiana. You got to have a boat to get to the bus stop a lot of times when the backwater backs up. And so I'd always had John boats and things like that, but they weren't very practical for moving and being stealthy and getting into tight places and getting them to the places. But I started fishing out of a pirogue. 1996, I was in the Navy. Just got to Corpus Christi, was driving down the beach, saw this guy paddling shark baits out. And it hit me like a freight train. I was like, that is how I'm going to fish.
That's crazy.
And we exchanged numbers way back before cell phones. He called me up like a month later and said, hey, man, you really liked my kayak. I'm about to sell it. And I didn't have the money, but we worked something out. And I went and donated blood to get the money to finish paying him for it. And that was my first kayak. And I entered a tournament in it about 6 months later and won the dang tournament against people in boats. A guy from corpusfishing.com called me up and asked me if I'd come out to a show in Corpus and talk about kayak fishing. So I didn't really want to, because I kind of felt like kayak fishing was my secret, but I did it. And then, dude, it's just been kind of like the part of my identity ever since. Like, most of my friends are people who kayak fish, or if you're a friend of mine, you end up in kayak fishing because I'm just that much of an evangelist about it. And then if you try it and you don't like it, we probably can't be friends. So,
I have an aluminum kayak. It's the stepchild of it, or sister. Or we're going to talk about. We're going to get on that more.
Anyway, I started KBF and wrote the book, and I was active duty Navy at the time. But man, I just remember something my grandpa said to me when I was about 15 or 16. When a buddy of ours was learning how to rodeo and was making money at it, and he said, if you can figure out how to get paid to do what you think about doing at work, you'll never work another day in your life. And I was like at about the 10 or 11 year mark in the Navy at that time. And I just said, you know what? That's what I'm going to do. And I just started slowly but surely figuring out how to make a living fishing. And it wasn't an immediate light bulb went off. It was more of you're not going to be able to do one thing and make it. You're going to have to do 50 things and stack them on top of each other. And I just learned that game the hard way, or the only way, in my opinion, which was to go to trade shows and work the booths and meet reps and, interact with customers and learn what customers wanted to know. And I think we've lost a little bit of that with the instant gratification of, hey, I've got 1,000 followers on Instagram. You want to sponsor me? And it's like, for what? Like,
right.
See it all the time, and we also have kind of gotten into, with social media, especially, companies have themselves, not just the people on the teams, but a lot of the companies have turned their pro staff into more of a direct buyers club instead of an actual pro staff. So that's really watered it down. And, I'll be honest with you, Debo, basically what it boiled down to is I went through the standard path of everybody else, trying the standard pro staff deal, trying the standard pro staff formula. But what I slowly but surely figured out is that those are people, not the company. You're by and large dealing with a rep group, an ad agency, or somebody like that. And so I just started really focusing on the companies that I had a great relationship with, the people who own the company, who are the company. I hear this a lot. Oh, I got screwed over by insert company name here. No, you got screwed over by a person who works at that company, who goes home every day and don't give a flying flip about that company. Yep. And so we've all done that to ourselves in today's society, where there isn't any loyalty from company to individual or from individual back to company. But I think we get it twisted sometimes when something happens and we think that company is the person that you were dealing with at that company. They're not. That's just that person you were dealing with.
I talk about that all the time. I'm an operations manager for a large insurance firm. And whenever you hear people talking about insurance or cable or insert product or thing name, I hate blank because of this happened to me. And it's never, I hate John, the customer service rep I spoke to, or It's always, I hate, like, for example, we have Mediacom cable, and you always hear people say, oh, I hate Mediacom. It's horrible. I'm like, well, does the internet work well? Well, yeah. Does your cable work well? Yeah. Well, what was the problem? Well, I called customer service and this person was a jerk and blah, blah. I'm just like, oh, so your problem's not the cable company. It's the person you were talking to, right? That doesn't care about the company.
And it's one of those things where if you just really become a student of human nature, a lot of these things that we get triggered by in this world, you won't get triggered by. For example, by and large, you wait until you get off work to make a call for customer service because that's how it works. You can't take up time at your job. So let's just say you're in the Eastern time zone and you get off work at 5:00 and there's a company that you're waiting to get your product service taken care of. And let's just say, for the sake of benefit of argument, they're in Central time zone. You got an hour delta there. You call that company up and they're probably shutting down their customer service around the same time, 5:00 or so. So you just got that person in the last hour of their work. They're getting inundated by calls from every other knucklehead that just got off work. And they're trying to get done with you as fast as they possibly can. And I did a video about this, and there's degrees of agree and disagree, which, by the way, you have inspired me to create a series called Agree to Disagree, and we'll talk about that before we're done tonight.
Me?
Yeah, little old you, and I'll tell you about something else you inspired too here in just a minute. But by and large, those people are just trying to get rid of you. Now you're frustrated, they're frustrated, you or they, somebody is the first asshole. And the next thing you know, it's a contest to who can be the loudest, the biggest butt. And next thing you know, you're both frustrated. You get off the phone and take to the internet. I'll never buy another product from Bonafide Kayaks or Hobie Kayaks or whatever paddles again because their customer service sucks. No, that customer service person sucks that you dealt with. So your first line of defense, in my opinion, is always your dealer. And if you buy products without a dealer and you're looking for that best possible price, and then you're cutting every corner to get the best deal that you can, and you're buying it from a clearinghouse, that's what you paid for. And so when you don't get great customer service, guess what? You gave up that great customer service by taking that great customer discount. You want service after the sale? Buy from a reputable dealer, and that dealer will take care of you, and they'll go twist the arm because they're not calling that customer service rep. They're calling somebody at the company, and they're saying, I spend $300,000 a year with you. You're taking care of this problem for me, not for Billy Bob. They ship you a new product. They get it taken care of, and now you never have to deal with that company. But
that's a super good point, Chad. And just to jump in real quick, Rand Dizzle broke one of his St. Croix rods. Exact same thing Chad's talking about here in the fishing industry. For any of you that, because I know rod warranties and stuff come up on my channel, people are talking about it. Randy just took his rod back to the dealer. He bought a local little store here. They took care of all of it. He didn't have to do anything. He didn't have to fill out the sheet, didn't have to do all the stuff, took it to them. They took care of the headache for him. Now,
100%.
St. Car was backed up, so it took a little bit, but that's not the shop's fault. That's everybody and their great aunt and uncle going out fishing now. So great point, Chad. Awesome point on that. People don't talk about that enough.
Thank you. Appreciate that. So anyway, yeah.
So sorry to jump in. You were talking about something else, but I wanted to point that out, fishing related, because I know that gets brought up on rods a lot. So I jumped in. I didn't want to forget.
No worries, dude. Well,
okay.
So before I forget to give credit where credit's due, and we get sidetracked and we go off on a tangent, and then we're done, and I go, oh, dang, I said I was going to tell him the idea that I got from his channel, and I was going to give him credit for something that I stole from him. So I'm going to go ahead and do both of those now, okay? So this is how much you think you literally think I'm joking, but I watch all your videos, or at least about probably 85% of them. I'll go on a 2-week filming trip somewhere where I have to shut my brain off, so I stay in a creative mode, and I may miss some, and then they'll circle back and I'll watch them 6, 8 months, a year later. So if you caught me at a right time, there may be a video or 3 that have slipped through the cracks. But I was watching your channel so much that your stuff just started popping up in my feed. So if you go back and look at a lot of my thumbnails, I actually started modeling some of my thumbnails after yours a little bit, just because I like the way that you lay your thumbnails out.
I appreciate
because that creates a great click-through rate for people. And if I'm clicking on them, I'm going to do that. But here's what I absolutely stole, like, exactly. I stole my channel icon from you. Like,
dude, you didn't see it. You were fishing when I hit you up on that. That was when you gave me your number and we were talking. But I called you out on my story. I'm like, I need to get Chad on my. Yeah.
I didn't even see that.
No, and that was after you gave me your number and you're like, oh, hey, hit me up. I honestly don't check a lot of this stuff. I'm on the road right now.
Right.
But I called you out on my story. I was like, I think I have a bone to pick with Chad. His Instagram thing looks eerily similar to mine.
I do remember you saying you have a bone to pick with me, but I didn't remember what it was. But here's what's happening. I was going through looking at channels and stuff, and I had changed my channel name from Kayak Bass and TV to Chad Hoover Fishing like 3 years ago. But I hadn't changed the logo, the icon. And, I teach clinics on branding and personal brand awareness and things like that. And I was just going through stuff. And I had actually started doing more of my YouTube watching through YouTube Studio instead of through the actual YouTube app, right? Just because for guys like us that have a channel, we use YouTube Studio a lot because it consolidates everything on the back end. So as I was watching through YouTube Studio, you know how it comes up different in YouTube Studio than it does on your real YouTube feed, because you have your little icons here and you have the other channels over here, but we're on YouTube Studio, they just take up the whole screen. I saw your Debo thing and I was like, bro, Debo, 4 letters, Chad, 4 letters. I'm stealing that. And I actually meant to screenshot it and send it to you and say, hey, bro, just so you know, I stole your same. I even got the same, almost exact same cant and everything. I'm like, hey, if that made me, like, literally that made me subscribe to your channel, I was like, well, I'm using that straight up.
That's awesome.
So, but that's one thing that I give you 100% credit for. I straight up.
I appreciate that. Yeah, you never need to give credit. I think people get so caught up on that stuff. Like,
there are a lot of people on YouTube that I feel like put out fishing content, and I'm going to get probably criticized for this. There are people who put out content that don't know what the hell they're talking about, and they are just regurgitators. In other words, they take content that somebody else put out and they just put a spin on it and throw it back out there. In fact, the Googans used to get criticized for that a lot in the very beginning because they're 20 years old, 18 years old. And it's like, you're talking about in my experience. That's like an ensign in the Navy who says, in my experience, like, bro, you don't got any experience. Shut up. So anyway, but here's what I'll say about your channel. I started watching your channel and I started looking at some of the claims you make in your titles and some of the claims that you make in your thumbnails, right? The thing that makes you click on a video. And when I would watch the videos, I felt compelled to side with your argument, even on stuff I didn't agree with, which was like compelling to me because I thought, Yeah, this guy does a really good job of articulating his position on things because he's giving you his position based on his experience with his justification. And there's a couple of videos where like you made the video and I'm like, no, he's dead wrong. Like he's dead wrong, in my opinion, based on my experience. But for every reason that you gave, I was like, okay. I mean, like, you don't leave me a real place to argue or to even interject. And I am in your comment section quite a bit, actually, you know, offering, engaging with your fan base, just because I think you have a really good fan base and I'm actually trying to help. That's what I really love about.
That's another thing. I'm going to sideline that. That's another side quest we're going to go on here. But yes, I appreciate that. And yeah, keep going.
But I like that interaction. I like people who just get real good value out of the content that you bring to the table. So if there's anything I could tell some of you new creators out there, or some of you old creators who finding frustration in trying to get your voice or your footing or whatever it is, provide something of value. Okay. And if you provide something of value, and more importantly, you get something of value out of the interaction, that's the powder keg moment for me 4 or 5 years ago, when I finally kind of figured it out, even though I outwardly may have looked like I had it figured out because I was doing TV. I was doing all that kind of stuff. I really didn't hit my stride on what I really enjoy about this until 5 or 4 years ago. And then I really decided YouTube's my favorite platform now, because it's where I get to build up my own community. Like TV, I do it and it's out there. Like, I'm not sitting there watching my show with my fans and then see what they think. You get that from YouTube, and it makes you better at what you do. And so for me, I just really enjoyed the genuine approach to content. But here's something else that I really like about your channel, because this is something that was either super brave or you just didn't care, or it's just that genuine, right? Is you're willing to show everyone things as you learn them as well. And man, I struggled with that when I started, because, coming out as the guy who wrote the book on kayak fishing and as the guy who's been on TV for a few years or whatever, you put yourself in this position where you think you're supposed to be the expert, right? Because, well, I've got to be this and I've got to be that. And I finally realized, man, what I got to be is me, which is now why I'm showing fly fishing and I'm showing fishing that I'm not great at, because you've got to be willing to suck to get better, right? That's just a true fact of things. And I think we all get too comfortable in one thing, and then we are not willing to experiment, right? I've got this weird mindset, man. If I suck at something, I'm doing nothing but that until I'm badass at it. If that makes sense.
That's why it's not fun. Oh, it's 100%. Yeah.
So when I started, I used to think crankbait fishing was bullshit. Like, straight up, I used to think there's no way dudes are really catching that many fish crankbait fishing. Like, I actually thought that. Now, granted, that's 20 years ago, and I was in my 20s. But I remember one time I was out and I ran into this guy who was catching fish on a crankbait. And I just remember paddling over to him. He was in his boat. I was in my kayak. He's a very successful bass pro now. I'll show you who it is. John Cruz. John Cruz was at a lake in Virginia, and I was paddling up, and he was just getting started, and I was just getting started. And I said, man, do you really like those crankbaits? And I remember he said, why would I say I like them if I don't like them? And it was a pure, simple, genuine, just a good dude making a good response. And I went, huh. He said, and he's like, here, man. And he gave me a tackle box full of I look back on it later, and some of them were prototypes. You know what I mean? And I'm in the prototype game. I can't imagine.
I sold those for millions. That's what funded my KBF.
Yeah,
but that's a different story.
I can't imagine having balls to give somebody a prototype of
for
stuff.
Sure.
But he just handed me a box of prototype lures and was like, here, man. I just remember I took the time to go send an email to Spro. Hey, guys, I just wanted to tell you, this dude y'all sponsor is such a legit, genuine dude. He had this impression on me. Not only did he like convince me to get better at crankbait lures, but I didn't even like crankbait lures before that. And now I'm like a crankbait aficionado. And back to that point of that big spinnerbait and that jig fishing, I actually cut my teeth on crankbait fishing in that big ditch that I had found that these fish would push into after they spawned on Briary Creek. And I just started really getting into lure modification, and I could see the fish follow the bait on the graph, but it wasn't staying in the strike zone long enough. So then I started like drilling holes in the top of them and adding weight and things like that, and just started catching big fish. And a lot like fly fishing, where you catch a fish by tying your own fly, there's nothing more gratifying to me than like coming up with a modification to a lure that beyond a shadow of a doubt the modification is the reason that you caught the fish, especially if you can duplicate it. But I just remember how genuine and available and straightforward he was, and we exchanged information, and we've been friends ever since. And in fact, I ended up staying straight across the hall the aisle from him at ICAST in the same apartment condo complex. And I texted him and said, "Hey man, somebody just crapped on this truck with missile baits on the side of it." He's like, "Hey, we're at this restaurant, come see us." And I'm like, "Man, I already got plans." But like, we've been friends that long. But I just remember thinking, that's how I'm going to be, right? If I'm a pro, is I'm just going to be real. And dude, it has cost me relationships. It has led to relationships. But I also think that that's what has kept me from a lot of exclusivities, because I feel like, for one, I think exclusivities are hard to sell.
It doesn't make sense. It honestly doesn't make sense in the fishing world. Yeah.
And you, again, I'm going to give credit where credit's due. When I started watching kind of the way you approach a lot of your product stuff, I'm like, yeah, a lot of people use, this lure, this brand, and this brand. But I had either had a sponsorship relationship that kept me from doing it, or I just steered clear of it altogether. That was kind of the two ways that I went about it. And there's some relationships that I've had and honestly, I can't believe they put up with me doing what I do. Like, for example, I've been sponsored by Yamamoto for, 15 years. And they send me anything I want. They take care of me. And I routinely use a soft plastic that has a same, category lure in that category. And they're like, yeah, man, as long as you also use our stuff, that's all we care about. And I just love those types of relationships. But I didn't necessarily apply it to the biggest categories, like kayaks, for example. And I did that last year. I made the move to go non-exclusive so I could start exploring other craft. And I think that's been very well received by my audience. But again, when I started studying other successful YouTube channels like yours, and I said, man, this guy's got something. I couldn't put my finger on it. And I was like, how does he get away with doing a video just sitting in his damn office? Like, I really said that one time watching one of your videos. Because I put this pressure on myself that all my videos got to be epic. And all my videos got to be this. And I started
all YouTubers do that. Yeah, all YouTubers do that.
More just regular old videos. And even with this fitness stuff, I thought to myself, like, should I put this on my channel? I got a fishing channel. Do my fans even care about this crap? Or and I even find the word fans weird. You know what I mean? Because I'm just a dude who fishes, man.
That's why I call them fishing friends, man. Yeah, these are all just fishing friends to me. These are all people I could, call up, hit up, and talk fishing.
Exactly. And people are always running into me at boat ramps or out on the water, and then I'll see later on social media they post like, yeah, he was just like a regular dude. And I'm like, I am just a regular dude, man. I'm just a regular dude who's trying to set the example for you guys that you can do whatever it is you love for a living if you're just willing to work harder than you would if you didn't do what you love for a living. Yeah. I don't believe anybody can be anything. I think that's some made up fairy tale BS. Like, I can't be a singer. I just don't have a voice. I can't teach myself that. I can't be, there's certain things you just can't be. But I think everybody has a badass something that they can be. You know what I mean? And I generally think it's tied to what your passion is. right? There's people all the time that say I'm a great salesman, but I don't believe that because I don't think I could sell something I don't believe in, right? Like
That's the difference.
I don't think I could go sell cars, right? I don't think I could sell, insert the
you don't have to sell it. If you believe in something, you don't have to sell it. You're not selling something if you believe in it and use it.
Exactly.
You're not selling it. And that's the thing that always comes up, because it always seems like there's this this great divide in YouTube of either you're 100% sponsored and you only use one thing and you only love that brand, or you talk about other stuff and just kind of say how it is. And I think the big cut in the middle is, if you're sponsored by someone and you truly believe it and you're just putting that information out there, you're not sponsored by them. You're working with a partner that you believe in and use it. Now, if you jump on and I don't even know something I would use. Chad, I'm sorry, I'm looking at you with that very beautiful dome of yours. But if I had a company hit me up about head wax or something, and I'm talking about how amazing it is, it's like people are going to see it like, I've never used that. Like, what the hell is this guy talking about? Like,
you want to know what's funny is, like, no crap, straight up, about 8 or 9 months ago, I got offered and turned down in one interaction, the biggest sponsorship offer I've ever had, and turned down the biggest sponsorship in one fell swoop. And I thought it was clever what they were trying to say, but I could not genuinely say, yeah, I'm going to go tell my fans about using something, or my family, because I consider my followers and a family. We're a community, right?
For sure. Yep.
But it was a company. Maybe I shouldn't say them.
I wouldn't say it.
That's who I am, bro. It's like,
okay, well,
what you get, it's real. A company called 4 Keys, right, reached out to me about doing and maybe it wasn't them. Again, back to our thing about not the company, but somebody working for the company. Yeah. But some creative person sent me this thing, was like, hey, what if we did an ad campaign where you're saying, guys, listen, it's too late for me, but you can keep your hair by using 4 Keys or whatever. Now you're laughing. I thought it was funny.
I love it.
I could have made it work. But at the same time, I'm telling you, I would be telling you to use something, A, that I never used, and B, that even if you got me back when I had hair, or I just didn't care enough about my hair to be like scrubbing some Delta, I wouldn't have done it. So I'm not going to sit here and tell you to do it. And I tell people all the time,
yeah, I get it, dude.
I use the products. I'm sponsored by the companies because I use their products. I don't use their products because I'm sponsored by the company. Sponsored.
That's exactly the way it should be. Yep. And I have no problem with that. People get all bent out of shape about, like, you never hear people talking about pros like, oh my God, that guy's sponsored, I hate him now. Like, that's YouTube, and I don't have a problem with that.
Well, as long as though? You know why that is, and maybe let's have this conversation since we're having it.
Well, because they can't do it. They can't do it without that.
Well, and it's because the pros are straightforward about it. They're pretty straightforward. You know they're sponsored because they have it on their jersey, they have it on their boat wrap, and they may have been sponsored by somebody else before, and people understand that's a professional relationship. So there's 2 reasons. 1, they're straightforward about it, and 2, people see them as making a living doing it, and they treat it that way. They act professional. Yep. Too many YouTubers don't act professional. They don't treat it like a profession. So therefore, when their fans react in a negative way to some type of endorsement, then they get ill about it. I'm really good friends with TJ, Yak Pack. And he's got this recurring thing he has to put out about every 8 or 9 months about how he hates the word sponsor. And I think what he hates is he hates the current posture of the word sponsor, and he hates the way the word sponsor is perceived on YouTube because of how people on YouTube have treated it. The actual word sponsor is a great deal. It's a relationship. This company values your ability to provide a return on investment, and therefore they compensate you for it. That's a straight up business proposition. That's no different than you going to work and receiving your check from your insurance company. It's the aberrations of sponsorships where everybody is willing to peddle anything, regardless of whether or not they believe in it. And you see these people doing a review of a product that they just got in. And I'm like, how are you reviewing something that you've never used? I love those.
So I'll jump in on that. So that I've labeled that and review as a word. So I've actually had to change because perception is reality, right? And to me, it was when I would do reels and stuff to start out, it was, I'm going to do a review of this bait caster. And, for me, review was showing you all the features, telling you what I think about it. I've got enough reels back there that I could get a pretty decent feel of what something is like and how it compares. However, you're right. It's not a full in-depth review. So I think sometimes it's a word thing, but I think most people think that way too. And I've had to change it to like unboxing and initial thoughts or something like that, because it's not a full
look.
Yeah, it's not a full-fledged review.
I just decided I'm going to start calling it what it is. If this is my first look at something and I'm going to give you my initial impressions, I'll just call it what it is.
Yep.
It's my first look,
Yep.
If I've got the chance to do a full review, then I'll call it a full review. What I love, though, is the whole review of something and you literally not even used it. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
In fact, I because of COVID, and I hate that phrase, but because of COVID, my rod company it was the final straw. And I enjoyed what I did. I enjoyed the process. I probably kept it going longer than I should have. A company called All Pro Rods. That was my company for about 8 years. And, I kind of did what the Googans did when I didn't have great relationships with rod companies and stuff. I just rebelled and went and found my own and bought in as a partner, then bought that partner out. And I was kind of, doing my own thing. Had some manufacturing issues, then had a manufacturer who had some legal issues for tax evasion and crap like that. And it ultimately was fatal to the company. And I'm very blessed with the relationships that I have in the industry. I went down the road of, I'm going to go back through the whole industry. And I went through and tried Daiwa. I went through and tried St. Croix. I went through and tried Abu Garcia. I went through and I tried everything. And there were certain things that fit and there were certain things that didn't fit. And I'm just going to be 100% honest with you. The circle back to Shimano it felt natural again because I'd spent the vast majority of my adult life with a Shimano in my hand. It just felt an old familiarity to it, like putting on an old baseball glove or something.
A lot of it is feel. A lot of it comes down to feel.
I had gone down the road. I had a lot of success with Lew's over the years. And I'm not going to get into, the politics of the game. But I just felt like that the Lew's Corporation or the companies that Lew's became kind of got conglomerized and they kind of went in a different direction. And it just didn't feel like family, right? It just didn't feel the same. And I didn't think I was going to end up back with anybody, to be honest with you. I just thought, I'll just stay independent. I've got a great relationship with Fish USA. I get pretty much any product that I want, either at a really good discount or, as part of my sponsorship. Sure. But I met up with the Shimano folks. I had a conversation with them about youth fishing. And I said, I want to double down on providing opportunities for youth. I don't care about me personally for sponsorships and all that other stuff, but I am going to throw my support behind the companies that will throw their support behind helping us grow youth fishing opportunities. And they're like, we're in. And I was like, but wait, you don't even know what I asked. They're like, whatever we can do is, if it's within our means, we're going to do it because we're right there with you. And we just aligned on that. Didn't assign a dollar value to it, just leaned into it and said, let's go. And it has just worked out to be a great relationship. And I'm transparent about that kind of thing. You know what I'm saying? So I don't go out trying to do every reel on the market, and I don't go out trying to do every rod on the market because I found the ones that feel good.
Jim and I'll handle that for you.
We
have that tackled.
Yeah, there you go. They let me do both. Whereas in the Shimano of old, I couldn't do Shimano NG Loomis.
Sure. One thing, that's it. Yep.
And I said, well, I'm only going to do this if I can do both, because I love Shimano reels. I like Shimano rods, but I love G Loomis rods, and I want to be able to fly fish with G Loomis stuff because they're still my favorite. And there's some nostalgia there because I helped design some fly rods early on with some folks at G Loomis, and that was just a really rewarding time
awesome.
in my early fishing career.
Sure.
So they were like, okay. And I was like, wait, what? So I can fish Shimano rods and G Loomis reel or Shimano reels and G Loomis rods? They're like, you can fish Shimano rods, you can fish G Loomis rods, you can fish whatever you want to. And that was a refreshing departure from the corporate posture of old,
Sure.
you know, when the rep group was the one that was making a lot of the decisions. And it's just been one of those blessings that that fell in place. You know, my kayak relationship was that I had this great relationship with the owner of Bonafide, a guy named Luther Cypress, who also owns Yak Attack.
We got a bunch of kayak questions coming for you too. I'm trying to get everybody going. And nope,
so
that's
anyway,
okay.
He left the company. The timing was when it was weighing on my heart to say, I really want to be independent, have some kayak relationships for specific sponsorships of a certain series of videos or whatever, but be able to do everything, because it was frustrating to me when people in the community would ask a question, hey, what do you think about insert kayak name here? And I couldn't answer the question, right?
Sure. Yep.
Now I can. So that has been, I'm like a kid in a candy store again, man, because now I can paddle.
We got a bunch of kayak questions for you. We got all kinds of stuff. I just typed in the comment section. I didn't realize we were at an hour, dude. We're already at an hour. So I'm probably going to go for an hour and a half, as long as you're good for another 30 minutes. All right. Yep. So I just threw in the comment section, everybody, we're going to do like a fast fire. Now I had 5 questions here that I wanted you to answer, because I feel like these would benefit folks questions that I get. When I get questions, unfortunately, I can't answer the kayak stuff, because the only kayak I've ever been on is my aluminum kayak, which is a John boat. I call it my aluminum kayak because it sounds cooler, because it seems like everybody hates John boat guys. Kayak guys hate the John boat guys. The nitro guys hate the John boat guys. So I just call it an aluminum kayak. Yeah, I feel like I fit in better. Okay, so best beginner kayak. Do you have like a condensed version of a couple choices for people just looking to get into the game? They don't want to spend $1 bajillion on a kayak. Are there a couple decent options without busting the wallet totally open?
Yeah, in fact, the new Yukon Lifetime boats are a lot better than I thought they were going to be. I actually went out and bought one, put it out through the paces, and believe it or not, even before I lost 100 pounds, did really well with my weight and my size, which was something that was surprising. So at the price point, that Yukon series of kayaks that are readily available at Tractor Supply Company and even some Walmarts and a lot of big boxes is really good, because you're not just going to buy that boat and throw all your money away. And I talk about this a lot on some selecting a fishing kayak videos on my channel. In fact, I'm redoing those in the next 3 weeks. But that's a good price point boat. There's 3 or 4 boats that I feel like are really good entry level premium boats. That would be the Bonafide RS 117. That's a really good boat. The Jackson Bite.
About that, yeah.
The Jackson Bite. I just did a couple of videos on that. And you know, here's the thing: when I'm doing these new boats, I'm either getting a deal from the company, I'm borrowing the boat from a friend, or I'm going out and buying the boat outright myself. And whatever that scenario is, I tell you that in the video. But even when I deal directly with the companies and they say, though, we'll give you a 30% discount, I'm telling them, like, I'm going to say, in fact, there's one company that you won't see me in their kayaks, because they said, well, you won't see me in their kayaks first. That may be towards the end. But they were like, yeah, we'll give you a discount, but you got to send us the videos first, so we can make sure we're okay with what you say before you send them out. And I'm like, nope. So anyway, that Jackson Bite's a good one. The Perception Pescador Pro is a really good boat at that price point. They're pretty readily available at Academy and places like that. And then another really good boat, kind of in that same category, that Jackson Kayak just made is called the Jackson Stax, Staxx, and it's really hard to find. It's not that available, and most retailers, even if they have it, they won't ship it because it's such a low price point that there's not enough margin in it for them to do shipping, or you would end up paying, almost as much for shipping as you did for the boat. What's cool about that boat is it's wide, it's stable. They went way back, throwback to a seat where you're just sitting on the plastic with a fold-up seat back, so they can save a lot of the cost. A lot of people don't realize that most of the cost from a premium sit-on-top kayak is the seat. It's just a big cost. Oh, yeah, dude.
I didn't know that.
Aluminum bending, because all that's manual or semi-manual, right? You got to bend that aluminum manually. Even if it's jigged out, it's still pretty well manual. They got to be manually assembled. The frames, the fabric have got to be put on there and sometimes sewn manually. So there's a lot of labor built into those seats. And so Jackson did a really good job with that boat called the Stax. So if you can find one of those, that's a good price point boat. It's probably the most premium boat for the lowest money on the market. And I would say an honorable mention in that category is the New Canoe Flint. That's a pretty good boat for the money. I think that they've kind of moved past it with the Unlimited, and I think New Canoe's having a little bit of manufacturing issues with availability, pretty much like everybody else. But the ones that I would say get a lot of popularity, but I'm still a little leery of, are your Pelican boats with the thermoform manufacturing, where there's the seam down the side of them. I see a lot of delamination there. Now, I got to be honest, got to give credit where credit's due. They do a hell of a job of standing behind those boats when they do have any issues. But those boats, that great warranty and great customer support doesn't do you any good if you're out on the river and you got a hole in your boat, or if you're out on a 3 or 4 day road trip, or if you're at a tournament or something like that. So I'm just a bigger fan of the rotomolded boats, but I also called what Hobie's doing my iCast game changer, in that links. And I did a follow-up video to it to kind of further clarify what I was trying to say. I love what they're doing with that concept, which is that ACE construction, where you've got a thermoform series of construction, series of layers, but a foam core that reinforces that thermoformed type of construction. And, they took that manufacturing concept from stand-up paddle boards and from that era, but it's nice to see that starting to move over. I'm not 100% sure if it's perfected yet, but it's just great to see that there is a move towards those alternatives. And I'm super stoked about the popularity of inflatables. I'm really digging fishing out of inflatables. And
are you talking about like a tube?
No, inflatables like stand-up paddle boards, kayaks that are specifically designed as inflatable kayaks.
Oh, really?
Yeah, man. And I even bought a boat this year called the Flycraft, which is a row frame, boat that is just a lot easier than loading up a bunch of boats to go float down the river. I can put it on the truck. The wife can take her Jeep. We can go drop it in the river, drop the Jeep off, float down, drive back to the truck, and go. That's pretty awesome. But yeah, those would be my choices for getting started.
A ton. Okay, that's a ton. Hopefully that helps you all. I'll be honest, I had no idea about half the stuff you were talking about because I am not in the kayak game. But I did even lost my earpiece here. I did see people, as you were talking about stuff, naming some of the same kayaks and stuff. So hopefully this is totally going to be geared toward the kayak stuff, because Chad is an expert on this stuff, and I want to pick his brain because I am not the guy to talk to. So Chad talking about giving credit where credit's due, he's the guy to give you this information. Okay, so my next question, pedal or paddle? Can you give us a 1-minute quick rundown of, if somebody's looking at pedal yaks versus paddle yaks, which and why? And I don't know if this is a quick answer, but if we can,
I'm going to give it to you quick because I've learned how to consolidate my thoughts on it.
Perfect.
I like to paddle. Okay. I like paddling kayaks. I like pedaling kayaks now that I can also paddle, but I have also expanded my horizons, had an open mind. I got a lot of satisfaction out of using the Blue Sky Boatworks pedal boat because it had a high seating position, and even with a bigger gut before, and I still got a big gut, but not like I did before. But I just felt more comfortable because of that high seat position down to so that really kind of opened my eyes to like, all right, I got to give this pedal thing a bigger consideration. At the same time, I tried some native boats that just didn't really fit my style of fishing, in that they were too bargy, right? They're too big. I'm experiencing a lot of the same thing right now with the Hobie Pro Angler. Like, I bought that boat, I love it, but I find myself choosing not to take it in a lot of situations where if it was my only kayak, I'd be frustrated that I either A, had to schlep it to where I was trying to go, or would choose not to go to that spot or go somewhere different because of my boat. I don't want my boat to limit where I want to go. I want my boat to unlimit where I want to go. So if the boat would still paddle well, which, by the way, I have recently experienced with the advent of the Bonafide pedal drive. And a lot of people are like, oh, that's why he's doing it, because he's Bonafide and they finally made a pedal drive. No, I could have had pedal drives from the minute that Native and Bonafide merged, and you never saw my fat butt in one of those boats because I tried them and they just didn't fit me. Okay. Another one of those scenarios where I left money on the table because it's not something that fit me. But if I can paddle it, I like it. What I do love about pedal drive boats is that by and large, their design is more designed to accommodate when you're pedaling, you're rocking back and forth. So the boats are more designed with stability in mind. And so even if they're not super efficient for paddling, because they have a flatter, wider, more of a displacement hole, or more of a planing hole than a displacement hole, which is a whole nother conversation for another day, they do motor well. So one of the things that I'm a big fan of is motoring, because I got into kayak fishing to catch more fish, not to get into a fitness contest or a paddling contest. And so one of the great things about that blending of the pedal and paddle world is because I'm a big fan of motors, the pedal boats seem to motor better, right? Because they're designed where the angler's body position is a little more forward of center, because it has to be. The boats are designed with a little more tank well volume and a little bit more stern volume, so they don't get sucked down in the back end. You know how when a boat gets sucked down before it breaks over? Mm-hmm. Well, with a kayak, when that happens and you suck that tank well down and the tank well fills up with water, it just actually creates more drag and the boat doesn't motor efficiently. And so for me, I'm still not 100% sold on the pedal thing. I loved the Lynx and I love the inflatable pedal drive that Hobie had out at iCast. I do love the 127. I got to be honest with you. It's really nice to throw the motor on it, haul ass to my spot, and then when I get there, be able to use the pedal more as my trolling motor and the motor as more of my outboard motor. And then it just paddles well for a boat that's designed for pedaling. And so I'm not a big fan of the big barge pedal drives. Again, I've got a love-hate relationship with my Pro Angler right now. I love it and I hate it and I love hating it. So it's kind of one of those deals. But it's opened my eyes to the benefits of pedaling. There are times when the pedal drive has really proved beneficial in the wind and the current, and especially when you set the hook on a fish and you can use that back pedal to pull the fish away from cover. So I'm a paddle guy first, paddle with a motor second, and then pedal third, to be honest with you.
Okay, that helps. And so from what I was hearing, it's kind of like a V-hole versus a flat bottom. It sounds like those pedals are kind of set up that way to be a little bit more stable. So would you say that for bigger guys, is that kind of the way to go? I see a couple people asking about, bigger guys asking about, so probably the pedal drive would be a little bit more stable.
And I think that the future of this thing is that, and we're going to get more of this as the competition increases, you're going to start seeing manufacturers that will build a boat that you can paddle, then you can add the pedals later where you don't have to make that big financial commitment up front, and you can grow with that platform. I think the company that really goes out and does that well is going to break off a big chunk of market share, because the one big limitation to the pedal drive commitment is, and this is contrary to what I say in other videos, if you're going to buy a pedal drive, buy the best one you can afford. When it comes to buying any fishing kayak, buy the one you can afford, and you can't get tomorrow ever. You can't get back tomorrow. So get that day on the water. But if you're going to go so far as to buy a pedal drive, buy the best pedal drive you can afford, because there is a vast difference between an entry level pedal drive and a premium pedal drive. And that mechanical fluidity matters. That mechanical and the comfort of those boats matter. The quiet operation matters. The durability matters. And so if you're buying a fishing kayak, buy whatever you can afford. If you're going to buy a pedal drive, save up and buy the best one you can buy first.
Makes sense. Yep, getting what you're paid for. Iraq Lobster dropped a question in here. Thank you for the donation, brother. I appreciate that. We got another one here. I'm going to make sure I hit. But said, thinking about getting all new or new all spinning rods. So I think he's saying like a dual spinning rod for $200. Been looking at the Zodius and Levante. Can't make the decision. Any of the rods you would recommend for the price? I've not used the Zodius or Levante. Have you used both of those?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. For the money and the durability and the mindless, just use it and don't baby your stuff. Then I've got more experience with the Zodius and would probably give it the edge in all around purchase value.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I would say the Zodius. Like,
I've heard a lot of good stuff on the Zodius too. Yeah,
I've got spiral wrap construction for what I do and for how rough I am on gear is just money.
Yeah, I agree. Shimano makes some good stuff. The Intenza. I was going to say, if you're not looking to go that high, I've been pretty impressed with the Shimano Intenza. If you're looking to stay with the Shimano family.
More impressed than I thought I was going to be with the Intenza, because I bought some as buddy rods and I didn't like the way they looked. It was almost like they were spray painted to a certain extent. But I think that look gives it a cheaper look than the actual rod performs. Does that make sense? Like,
yeah, I get what you're saying.
But it's a quality rod. In fact, I've got one it's in the rotation. It's one of my staples. I love it. I use the hell out of it.
And especially Iraq, if you're using braid, like I'm always braid to a leader on my spinning rod. Mm-hmm. Even if you don't have like the money to spend, or for anybody out there, if you don't have $200 to spend, I always tell you, well, I think that $100 price point, you're getting more for your money than spending, the 100 or 200. But go braid, because braid's really going to give you that extra sensitivity and just tie on a leader. So exactly,
it's going to literally add $50 to the price of every rod in sensitivity, straight up.
Yep.
And so, again, this is kind of a fallback to what I said, where I just say whatever the hell I think, regardless of whether I'm sponsored by somebody or not.
That's all right. Regurgitate it.
You'll see me using the Intenza, but you'll have to really pay attention, because I just couldn't like the look. So I spray painted mine. I actually got out.
You did, for real?
I did, man. It looks a lot like a Zodius in the rod holder. And I've got a Stratic reel on it. But yeah, I got out some car model paint, and
if you need an airbrush guy, I know a guy.
Set it up. I have an airbrush system, and I'm an artist, and I just never got into it. I just I put it on a roller, wooden rods, and just hit it from a distance, and just kind of misted it, and I let that cure, and then I hit it again, and I hit it again. If you look at it, you can really tell, but I
like the customized stuff. I'm not mad at that at all. Bobby didn't leave the question. Bob, if you have a question, let me know. But thank you so much for the donation, brother. My guy Dersh is always in here to support with the $10 bomb. I appreciate you, man. Hopefully work's going well. He's always on his lunch break at this time. So I appreciate you, dude. Let's see. I have not been looking at comments. I've been trying to get caught up on stuff here. So I'm going to look at comments real quick. But since actually we're talking about rods, this is a perfect segue. Chad. Kayak rods versus regular rods. I hear people talk about this a lot.
No.
Okay. And I know you kind of touched on this on the last one, because I think it was the St. Croix, whatever the yak, the black and purple one is, the yak rods or whatever.
Mojo yak rod or whatever.
Mojo yak. Yep. Yep. So, okay. So do you have any, because I get those questions a lot like, hey, Debo, when I'm on my John boat, I honestly fish standing up 99% of the time because I hate fishing sitting down. So, from a kayak, I know you probably do that more. Is there any sort of, you say no, is there any sort of stuff you would take into consideration? I know hook set is kind of another thing.
Well, here's
Anything
what
you
I
can lend on
see.
that?
Here's where I see the need or the prescribed need for it. A lot of people, when they sit in a kayak, they sit kind of leaned back. I get my hand leaned back like this.
Okay.
And when you're sitting lean back and you hold your rod out in front of you, you have a tendency for the rod butt to kind of hit you in your torso or in your PFD. So I tell everybody, use your foot braces to push back and keep your butt against the very back. Like if this is your seat, your butt should be all the way back against it. Your back should be as vertical as you could be.
Mm-hmm.
And you should almost always be slightly leaned forward. Because if you actually sit up so much that you lean forward, you pedal better, but you also take the weight off of your hips, you take the strain off of your real delts, and you're not flexing your abs because you're actually leaned forward. So you're putting the biomass of your body forward of your hips, so you're not sitting there in like a mini half crunch. Once you do that and you're sitting in the kayak properly, you just use the same rod you would use any other way. So by and large, what I tell people is this. If you're having a problem with your rod butt in a kayak, you're probably sitting in the kayak wrong, or stand up, because I stand up in my kayak a lot. Now, I did have a year where I had gotten so freaking out of shape that I ended up having a cardiac event, and I had a catheter that had to be put into my leg. And then I had some complications when they took it out, which caused this weird blood clotting in my leg. So there's like a whole season of my show, a whole year, where if I stood up too long, my damn leg would go to sleep. Well, I don't know if you know this or not, but if you're wearing $1,000 mic and you've got all this expensive crap on your kayak and you stand up, your leg goes to sleep and you fall out, it's a pretty expensive deal. And it's an end of a fishing trip and so on and so forth. So I reinforced even then that I sat down and still fished effectively without using a kayak specific rod. The other problem I see with the kayak specific rods is, and you talk about this a lot when you're talking about combos and things like that, is balancing the rod. Well, by and large, what ends up happening is, people cut the handle off and then the weight of the rod is forward of the handle. And it's actually counterintuitive. If you want to make a rod feel lighter, you put weight in the butt. You don't take weight out of the butt. And so that's another thing that's always frustrating to me is that when you shorten the rod, now you're holding it out in front of you. You're holding it above your heart. That rod is less sensitive because it feels heavier because you've created an out of balance situation. So for me, I've never seen a company really address that well. And I don't really do the talk bad about a company product line ever, right? But I just feel like that the St. Croix, for the level that you expect from St. Croix, I think that the rod series was a miss. The kayak series, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I had high hopes for it, I had high hopes for everything kayak fishing related. That's what people fail to realize is a lot of times when they think that I'm biased or this, I have high hopes for everything because competition leads to innovation. Innovation leads to more competition. More competition leads to more innovation. And when companies compete, we as the anglers win, period. No matter how you slice it, that's why you have the most premium feature from 5 years ago in the price point products of today.
That's yeah. I've talked about that before.
You remember when DSI came out? You couldn't buy them DSI depth finder for under $500. Now you can get DSI on a $99 depth finder. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Like, and that argument is out there that like, has technology gone too far? Well, and I hear this argument a lot. Technology has gone so far that it's made it where the average man can't afford it. It's not true. It's 180 the opposite. The technology advancements have made it to where the bottom is higher, the middle is higher than higher, and the upper middle is even higher than that at a better price point because now you can afford those features that were the hottest thing then. You know what I'm saying? There's a Lowrance triple shot that's got structure scan, DSI, and freaking chirp in it for under $500. You couldn't get any one of them for $500 6 years ago, you know? So that argument, to me, is moot. But I really hoped that series did better. And it may do well for sales because we all know you got to catch fishermen before you catch fish. But I don't buy into the kayak rod. People ask me that all the time, and I'm like, so I owned a rod company for 8 years and I never made a kayak rod, and I'm a kayak guy.
I think that sums it up well. That makes sense. George Foles, thank you very much for the donation, man. If you have a question, please leave it. I appreciate the donation. Sean, thanks for bringing chat on. What happened to APR rods? I think we kind of already went through that.
Yeah, I lost about $100,000 in materials in the manufacturer being shut down because he wasn't paying FET, which is the federal excise tax on rods. And that was after some other things. But literally, when you lose your mandrels, when you lose thousands of dollars in existing product that was already built, all of your accessories and all of your patents or patterns,
what do you do? Yeah, you're starting from scratch again.
Yeah.
Yep. Rolling with the donation, the Big 10 bomb. Thank you, my friend. Thanks for always answering questions. I try to, dude. It's I can't believe time has gone so fast. We're at 1 hour 25. Still 230 fishing friends sticking with us. Damn, you guys are awesome. But he said, here's one if you have a second. Any treatment for the bottom of a yak, duct tape, etc., to protect against scrapes?
You know, the best treatment for the bottom of your kayak is more scratches. If you put more scratches on it, you won't see those old scratches. 100%. I'm going to tell you guys this. Go watch my video called Dragging a Fishing Kayak. I drug a fishing kayak 15.2 miles. And the only reason I stopped it then is because the sheriff's deputy who lived in my neighborhood and finally got sick of me dragging it by his house so many times and making noise that he called me and said, all right, dude, enough's enough. But I was going to see how many miles it would take to drag through it. You are not going to drag your kayak 15.2 miles if you drag it 100 yards up and down the boat ramp. Do the math on that. It would be 1,700 yards in a mile if you drug it 100 yards every single time times 15. You do the math on that and tell me if you're going to drag through the whole of your boat. And if you're not going to drag through the whole of your boat, who cares? So I tell people all the time. That's crazy.
See, I wouldn't have thought that. I'd have thought you'd have to baby that.
Do you treat the soles of your shoe before you go walking in them? No. That's what they're for. So
that's a legit question, though. I would have thought you'd have to kind of baby it. I wouldn't have thought you can't.
I'm not saying, I'm only saying it the way I'm saying it to be definitive.
Sure.
Don't waste your time trying to treat the hull or tape it or do any of that other stuff. Literally just go. Just drag it flat, keep it flat.
I like it.
Get a heat gun about once every 6 months and just heat it up and just melt all those little curlies back into the groove they came from and just, you know, give it a little bit of preventative maintenance, but don't worry about the protection. It's just it's pretty much a waste of time.
There's other things that are going to mess it up before that.
Yes, sir.
I like it. George with the donation, the 5 bomb. George, thank you very much. And I think I had one more. I don't want to miss it. I don't want to miss any sort of donations because those mean a lot to me. I think I am all cut up. Oh, wait. Yeah, I think I'm all cut up. Okay. We've only got a couple minutes left here. Okay, here, Chad. Here's the one that we were going to arm wrestle on. I think I might stand on this hill. I don't know. We'll see. Kayaks versus aluminum kayaks, a.k.a. small John boats. Do you think if I have a John boat, so I've got an old, actually funny story, the John boat that I fish out of now was actually my old man's when I was young, when I was like 5 years old, that he had at the time, and I'm actually using it now. And my dad still laughs at that. He's like, I can't believe when I watch your videos, you're out on that damn John boat that I bought when you were like 5. He's like, it's come full circle. But so it's like an 11-foot John boat. There's guys out there with kayaks that are bigger than my John boat. And people ask me, Debo, you need to get a kayak. I'm like, I can't put into I can't put the money into a kayak when I've already got an 11-foot John boat. Like I can't even think of the word right now. Justify. I can't justify buying a kayak when I have this. So if somebody has a small John boat versus a kayak, do you get that question? Is that something that comes
nonstop, 100%.
Oh, okay.
Probably the go-to, what I call ignorant comment on my channel is people say, for that kind of money, you might as well buy. Now I said ignorant, not stupid, because ignorant means you don't
lack
know.
Of information. Sure, lack of information.
So here are the benefits of a kayak over a John boat. Maneuverability, both getting it to the water and once you're on the water. Lot less susceptible to wind. You wear
kayaks are really they're less susceptible than
way less susceptible. John boats basically just freeboard. You know what I'm saying? And a John boat is a flat bottom, so it spins like a top in the wind, except when you have a motor in the water. Because people go, well, my John boat doesn't spin that much. Well, do you have a motor on it? Yeah, well, that's why it's not spinning, because the motor is creating the drag. Add that same thing to a kayak, and you're not going to have it spin either. So the performance is better on a kayak because it's actually more of an efficiently designed hull. You can paddle it with a double blade paddle, which means you can go forward, backwards, sideways, everything. Whereas with a John boat, it's very hard to side stroke a John boat. And so what I tell people all the time is the real argument about that would be very easily demonstrated. If we got out on the water in a kayak versus a John boat, and we played the water polo version of a basketball, you got your paddle, I got my paddle in a basketball, and we played soccer, I would destroy you in a John boat, period. It's just a fact of maneuverability and control. So if that same maneuverability and control would apply to a game of water polo with a basketball, it applies to fishing. And then the lower, the lower posture, the ability to get down and skip under docks and things like that easier than you can, is also a little bit of it. But here's the other thing: stealth. John boats are by far the loudest platform on the planet. The reason that your grandpa tells you to be quiet is because you were fishing in a John boat, like this picture right here. My grandpa put AstroTurf in the bottom of all of our John boats, wrapped around wood to quieten them down, because I was constantly dropping something, or he would drop something. And, sound travels 4 times as fast in water as it does in air. And so you drop something in an aluminum John boat, it's going to spook every fish for 3 miles. Now, all things being equal, a really great angler in a John boat and a really great angler in a kayak, they're both going to be very wary of all the things that can spook fish. So you're probably going to do well in both. But all things being equal, and the experience level is not adequate, a kayak is going to give you an added measure of stealth, an added measure of security. The last one is safety. No matter how many times I go out fishing, the most unsafe configurations I ever see on the water are dudes in John boats. And when I say dudes in John boats, I mean 4 dudes in a John boat. 5 dudes in a John boat with a rating of 2. And so if everything was used accurately, then the John boat's just as safe by and large, with the exception of the fact it's not self-bailing. Okay. Every John boat has a standard issue milk jug or Coke bottle with the bottom cut off laying in the back of it to bail it out. Kayaks are self-bailing. Now, Debo, I
use the top of my battery box for that.
That's only 4, and I have about 30
that makes sense
as the benefits of a kayak over a John boat. And so for me, I hear the argument all the time, man, for that kind of money, I just buy a John boat. But you're comparing apples to oranges.
It is. Saying, you bring up good points.
Man, as expensive as those running shoes are, I'll just buy high heels. It's a different thing for a different application. So I'm going to get you in a kayak. Trust me.
Ooh.
I'm just going to get you a kayak.
Dude, you do not do that. I am
doing it. Trust me.
You will not do that.
I'm going to create a monster.
Unless it's one of those cool inflatable ones.
I'm creating a monster.
Desert Fisherman with the donation. Thank you very much, brother. Says, Chad, thanks for all the great content and sharing your love of fishing and kayaking with us. I bought, okay, you'll know what this means. I have no clue what it is. An EX123 in 2019. It's been great. Whatever that is.
It's
Chad's,
the Expedition Edition Bonafide kayak. That's a grab and go, throw over your shoulder. It's a sit inside, sit on top hybrid boat that it's probably one of the more underrated boats on the market.
So does and this is again an ignorant question. The 123, is that a 12-foot 3-inch?
Yep.
Or is, okay.
Yep.
Okay. Well, hey, look at that. Look at that, folks. Even a blind squirrel finds a nut once in a while. My guy Justin Beard said, got the DEBO lures and they did not disappoint. Well, thank you very much, brother, for supporting me and my ventures and picking up a lure. I appreciate that. Let's see, a couple more here. We're at an hour 35, Chad. I will not keep you a ton. We've got a couple questions more. Glangford 2010 just dropped the donation and said, I really enjoy your videos. Very informative. Well, thank you, man. I know we both appreciate that. And let's see, one more here. Ever used night crawlers? Been good for me this week. Tanner Preston. Tanner, dude, night crawlers are probably the one thing that, like, if somebody, Chad had the expression, I had a gun to my head. Dude, anything and everything will eat a worm. I don't know why. It doesn't make sense because you don't find a worm. Like, granted, there's red worms and stuff, but like a night crawler, I can't imagine there's a plethora of night crawlers. Maybe if they're crawling out of the bank and falling in, but like just being thrown out on a bobber, like that can't be natural.
It's not natural, but I'll tell you this. I actually started, and I wrote about this in my book. I started snorkeling for fish when I became a rescue swimmer in the Navy, and I had this snorkeling gear. And I was looking under docks to try to find fish. And I remember one time I went under a dock and I saw these fish really down close to the bottom, and they were literally blowing. It was not a joke. They were blowing. They were sucking in water and blowing it. And they were blowing leaves up, and it was only in like 3 foot of water. And when they would blow these leaves up, when they scattered these leaves, they were kicking up leaf litter off the bottom, and earthworms are under that because that leaf litter makes like a waterproof seal on the bottom. And these catfish were blowing the leaves up. And then when these earthworms would literally get neutrally buoyant and start floating away, they just suck them up. And I immediately went, well, that explains that.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Okay, well, damn. See, Tanner, look at this. We're picking Chad for everything. I'm getting my money's worth tonight, damn it. Let's see. Will said, I agree. This is another kayak question. He said, I agree. I had an 11-foot V-hole John boat. Yeah, not super stable. And bought a Vibe Yellowfin 120. Only wish it was a little wider to be just a little bit more stable while standing. But I think he was saying the whole John boat versus kayak. He's a lot more happy with his kayak for, yeah, dude, V-holes, like those little V-hole John boats are horrible. Good for speed and motor and stuff. But damn, if you're going to try to stand up
and
in
a
one.
Little Yellowfin 120 is also like sitting on a grease log. So you probably compared one of the worst kayaks for stability to one of the worst John boats for stability too. So
but that's saying a lot too. Yeah. If you've got a kayak like that,
wider, just a little bit wider kayak and you'll be much happier. And if you want to give John boats a better go, get a good flat bottom, 11 to 14 footer, and you'll be super happy.
Don't get a little 11-foot like I have, because people are always asking me, dude, DEBO, why aren't you going to put casting deck on that? I'm like, I've almost fallen out of mine like 10 times. There's no way I would put a casting deck and stand on top of that. Okay, so I think I've got all the donations. Chad, I had one more question for you, I think, which will be a fun one. I've seen some people asking budget stuff in here. I've actually got 2 questions. One's not fishing related, but I ask everybody. Best budget kayak mod, or if you have like a couple good ones that you would like, that you kind of tell people about.
Easy day.
Oh, perfect. Okay.
The best, there's 2 budget kayak mods that are the easiest, and they're the cheapest, and they're the most like bulletproof from getting started. And it's where every kayak fisherman who's been fishing more than 12 or 15 years has had this in their arsenal. A milk crate with 4 PVC pipes cut off about that much taller than the milk crate and just zip tied into the corners. That is your budget go-to tackle management, gear management, organization, cheap. And if you can't find a milk crate, go get an office crate for about half the price from Staples or Walmart or somewhere like that, and just do the same thing. But literally, you just take a piece of PVC pipe, put it in the corner, mark it about an inch higher, cut it with a hacksaw and then cut a little groove in it for the reel handle to sit in. Done. The last one is anything you want to secure to your boat. If you don't want to spend the money on your rogue fishing company, who make the best tethers in the game, in my opinion, just buy some bulk bungee. You basically make a loop by putting a hog ring on it, which is just a hog ring from Ace Hardware for clamping fences together or making crawfish traps. That makes a little loop on there, and you can fold that loop and make a loop to its loop and cinch it around anything. You can make a rod leash, a paddle leash, a plier leash. So bungee and milk crates, the simplest, easiest thing out there. And honestly, everything else that you could ever probably want for kayak fishing could be made out of PVC. Like straight up, there's been so many works of art in the world of DIY kayak fishing.
I've seen that stuff. PVC. Yeah, there's some crazy stuff.
PVC, Home Depot, aisle 7, I believe it is. Like that was the when you were a kayak fisherman back in the day. That's that was it. That's what you did and made everything out of. So yeah, that'd be it.
Okay, perfect. I like that. I like those. Nick did leave a donation here. Nick, thank you for the 5 bomb. Said, what should be my first kayak? I'm 20 and have a hand-me-down 2001 truck. So I have space, but I don't have deep pockets. So I think he touched on some of the budget stuff before, Nick. Do you ever talk about like a first? I mean, there's so many factors I would think that. Yeah,
again, I tell people all the time, don't buy a disposable kayak. Don't buy anything under about $300 because it's just going to be a disposable one. So let me just make this point because it is a valuable point, and you've got a lot of people watching this. If you paid $300 for a kayak and you used it for a year, and at the end of the year you couldn't sell it for $50, you lost $250. If you bought a used kayak and you only got it for $150 less than it was on retail, you also saved what you got it for on tax, and you use it for a year, you could probably sell that boat for either the same price or maybe $100 less. So in one regard, you got a cheap disposable kayak that cost you $250 to use for a year, or you can get a used boat or a more premium entry-level boat that at the end of that year you can sell and only lose $100 on, and you fish for a year for $100. So, and I tell people all the time, the most value you get out of something,
used is a good point,
is how much you use it. Okay, if you buy a cheap kayak and you use it once, that kayak costs you $250 a trip. If I buy a $2,000 kayak and I use it 300 times, I got a better value out of my $2,000 kayak than you did your $200 kayak that you use once. So you kind of got to look at that value proposition as well.
That's a good point. And, there's just so much kayak stuff out there. Like, I haven't done a ton of research. Nick, I would say do research. Go over to Chad's channel. I guarantee he's got 8 bajillion. Honestly, Chad, I'm not going to lie. I don't watch your kayak stuff, like when you have kayak mods and stuff. But I love your fishing stuff, fishing tips, mods to stuff, but that type of stuff, if I were to look at getting a kayak, that's what I would do, that kind of research. And you bring up a good point. If I go out and buy a cheap $300 kayak and I have a horrible experience in it, I've not only wasted that money, but then again, I've kind of tarnished what kayak fishing would be if I started out in something that was a bad experience. So buying used, I've heard that from a lot of people, is
if
buy
you got
used.
A massage with sandpaper gloves, you would hate massage. And then you would think that you hated massage. So I tell people that little analogy all the time. It's not what you're doing. You're just doing it wrong. And you're not going to like something if you do a bad job of it. And Debo, I am going to give you one little tip. And all of my kayak fishing family know this. I actually hide my best tips in my kayak fishing videos. My best fishing tips, because even though I'm talking about kayak fishing, I'm still talking about still talking about fishing. So
and I'm guilty. Hey, I'm being honest with you, brother.
I'm glad. I'm just letting you know that I have started breaking out some of those better tip videos into shorts and things like that. But by and large, all of my videos are tip videos. It's just that a lot of time they're buried into a kayak fishing trip. So,
you've got hidden gems, Easter eggs as the video.
Easter eggs, man. Easter eggs.
Philip, I don't know what this is. I didn't see this one, but DEBO'S ice fishing mean guy. So I ran into an ice fishing jerk versus Chad's Creek Gate guy. Who wins?
Your guy, because my guy was just a blowhard. You know what I mean? He was never going to do anything. He just liked to run his mouth. I probably should have done I said this in the video. I should have done a better job of handling that situation. But if I had got out of my kayak, that dude would have been in his house, shivering, curled up against the door, or he would have called the police. Your guy was an actual, it was a different scenario.
He was a jerk. Yeah. And it's the same thing. Like, he's not worth my time. I did MMA for 13 years. So like I did the ego thing for a long time. Like, you're in a proving ground. You're in with the Lions every day trying to prove yourself. And I just got, I got tired of that. And
speaking of MMA, I can't believe I waited this long because I was going to flip the script on you. So I'm an MMA fanatic.
Yeah.
Never got to train MMA per se, but I got a few scars on this. I didn't get this ugly just by birth. I actually did a lot of what they called cage fighting back in the day, but it was more I rodeoed, and a lot of stock contractors would create these cowboys versus cowboys fights. And when you were broke and you didn't make a check and you had to get home, you'd go do this dumb stuff, right? So tonight, I got it playing upstairs. So as soon as I get off here, I'm going back up there to jump in on it. But who you got in the big fight tonight, or do you still follow it? Or
dude, I don't. It's the weirdest thing. I was as far in MMA as you could go. I mean, we were training sometimes 3 times a day in the gym. Watched every fight, never missed anything. And that's when like UFC was once a month and like you could look forward to it. I was actually more of a Pride guy. Vanderlei Silva, all-time favorite fighter. Back in his heyday, I guarantee he would make anybody cry. Just how mean he was. He used to do the whole shoot fighting, no gloves. Like you're your bare hands ready to go. I honestly don't follow the fights really anymore. I don't even know who's fighting. And I saw my buddy posted a picture, but half the new people I don't even know.
Derek Lewis versus Cyril Gahn. It's a America versus France kind of a thing.
Oh, yeah. See, I don't even follow it.
All right. Well, so much of that.
I'm sorry to let you down. Damn it.
No, it's all good, man. I get exactly what you're saying. I used to rodeo, and even after I stopped for years, I was like obsessed with it. I watched it, and I haven't probably watched it in 8 years, 7 years, something like that. So
it's just one of the like. I felt like a phony. Like after I stopped training, I felt like a phony, and then I kind of fell in love with it. I'm like, I don't do it anymore,
dude.
I feel like a fake, not watching this. So I just
the craziest thing that ever happened to me is after I quit rodeoing, I went and tried to watch the rodeo from the stands and could not watch it from the stand. Oh yeah, it was one of those weird things. I felt like a poser, is what we called them. I felt like a poser. Yep. I was like, but I could be a fan, and I just couldn't get over that mental thing, and I just stopped going. So
it's weird. Okay, I think we got one more donation. I'm up with my questions. So, I do have one non-fishing one. So Jesse's donation seems to be the John Yak versus Kayak. My aluminum kayak versus the kayak. Depends on your fisheries and how you use it. Both are a great way to get off the bank. Yes. So Jesse, number one is anything you have at your disposal to get off the bank. You all know I love bank fishing. And for me, a lot of times it's just a time thing. Like I've got a family, I've got 2 girls, my wife, work, it's easy for me to just, as soon as my wife gets home, literally get my butt in the truck, go fish for 2 hours and come home, as opposed to getting my boat loaded, launching the boat, getting all the stuff in the John boat. Like you've literally got an hour of prep time just doing that stuff. So for me, bank fishing is get a couple hours and then come back. But number one, anything that gets you off the bank is better than nothing, because you can hit more spots. And I agree with how you use it, because Chad brought up a good point about maneuverability. I guess I didn't really, obviously I knew they were more maneuverable, but for me, if you ever watch any of my kayak fishing video or any of my John boat fishing videos, I'm only using my motor to get places. That whole anchor system that I put into play is literally because I need it. Like Chad was saying, it's going to blow me all over. So I put my anchors down, I'll fish a spot, and then I'll kind of move over. So if there's no wind, it's fine. I can sit in a spot and I can, just kind of let the current take you and, kind of float like you would in a bass boat with your trolling motor. But yeah, if there's wind, I mean, it's rough.
And what's funny is I've done videos over the years called Take It to the Bank, where literally I tell people all the time, one of my favorite ways to fish from the kayak is to go to places on the bank that other people can't get, because then I'm not out there putting my shadow out. I'm not out there banging into treetops. But if I'm on the bank and I have a kayak and I hang up, I can jump in the kayak, paddle out there, pull my lure free, paddle back in and go back to fishing. And I can hop. I can hop down the bank. And so just like floating down a river to get away from other people on the river and then getting out and wade fishing, I like to bank fish, but do it from the kayak. In fact, I'm the only series that allows bank fishing from the kayak as part of a kayak fishing tournament, because I feel like bank fishing and wade fishing are part of kayak fishing. Because they're part of fishing.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. All right. Well, I think we're at the end of the show. Chad, I can't believe I've had you on for an hour and 50 minutes. Chad, before we go, if you could only have one potato chip flavor for the rest of your life, what's it going to be? What's the best potato chip flavor out there?
Best potato chip flavors.
I feel like you can see into a person's soul.
I'm going to get a lot of flack for this because I do like the hot stuff. But if I had to pick one, it would be salt and vinegar.
Oh, okay. So when I hear people say salt and vinegar, you're a little edgy. You're up for trying new foods, right? Hey, it fits. For
Kinda
me,
like
it's
my personality, man. I'm a little bit.
Hey, I'm not putting that down at all. I like it. Salt and Vinny's, for me, it's the cheddar sour cream. I think they're the chip that reigns supreme, but it's just a fun thing I like to do. We kind of joke about it, but
I appreciate it.
Yeah, dude. So for me, dude, I just have to thank you so much for dropping the knowledge, helping all the people out that have the kayak questions. I can't intelligently answer them. So Chad, thank you so much for dropping that in. And where can we find you? For anybody that's on my channel that hasn't watched Chad, what's your channels? Where can they find you?
You can look me up here on YouTube, Chad Hoover Fishing. Just look for my logo that looks just like DEBO'S, except it says Chad. And you can find me anywhere on social as Chad Hoover Fishing, or obviously Kayak Bass Fishing. I've got Kayak Bass Fishing on Instagram, kayakbassfishing.com, Kayak Bass Fishing on Facebook. And so, look, man, I'm going to be honest with you. I've talked about this before, and this is really why I've been trying to corner you to do some type of, collab or get together or something. Is I'm going to start doing some agree to disagree videos with your videos, because I feel like you're the only person who does a good job of articulating things that I disagree with to the point where it makes me consider my own position, if that makes sense.
It
so
does,
when I see these videos in the future of yours and I go, I don't 100% agree with that, but I'm going to agree to disagree. I'm going to do a video reviewing your video and then tell people to go watch yours as well. So that way I can offer my perspective, but say, here's another perspective on this same topic. And the guy does a damn good job of making his point. So you go watch both videos and then you decide. And I think that we all treated each other that way more, especially in today's society, where if you don't agree with somebody, doesn't mean they got to be canceled, or it doesn't mean they're wrong, or it doesn't mean you got to dig your heels in and fight even harder. We've turned social media into emotional media. And I do think that these platforms are good platforms if treated correctly. And I want to do a better job of articulating my point, not vilifying somebody else or getting vilified because they don't agree with me. So y'all be on the lookout for some agree to disagree videos with Chad and DEBO.
Cool. I'm down, man. We need to do some collabs. We'll do kind of a half and half video of it. Yeah, all right. Well, folks, we're getting out of here. Thank you all so much for joining. Everybody who donated. I love you guys. Appreciate y'all. Chad, again, thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
Appreciate it. Until next time.